Hello students, welcome to the daily news analysis. I am your educator Prithviraj Singh. I hope you all are enjoying. Today we will be discussing the important news articles of 18th February 2022. So in the today's newspaper we had a news article which talked about the pact, a trade pact between India and UAE. UAE is a Gulf country, as you can see on the screen. UAE is a Gulf country, and it is being surrounded by many other Gulf nations like Saudi, Qatar, Oman, right? And it also has to the north Gulf of Oman and the Gulf, right? Now India has entered into a free trade agreement FTA with UAE, and in this sense it is the first ever bilateral FTA between the two countries, right? So this is very important move by the government. A first ever bilateral free trade agreement between India and UAE is being signed by the government, and it would be developed as a CEPA, right? CEPA is the abbreviation for Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, right? Where the import duties would be slashed or eliminated. It is being proposed, guys, that 5% import duty would be slashed. Okay guys, so as you can see that the government has entered into CEPA, or Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, with UAE, which is a Gulf country, and it has been proposed that UAE would be reducing or abolishing the import duties, right? And they would be reducing it by 5%. So in this way it would be a huge market for India, guys, because mind you, UAE is the I mean in terms of our trade partner, UAE is the third largest trade partner for India, and it is the 9th largest investor in India. So in this way the FTA would be very fruitful agreement between the two countries. And guys, I expect a question on this, because they may ask you that recently the government has signed a free trade agreement with which among the following countries, and it is the first ever bilateral FTA between these countries. So the answer would be UAE, right? And a CEPA would be enacted between the two countries, right? Now, so this is the map of the UAE, and the benefits of this is that India and UAE is India's third largest supplier of crude oil. So that is a very important, that would become a very important move, because UAE is the third largest supplier of the crude oil, for India, and the second largest supplier of LPG and liquefied natural gas, right? So UAE is the second largest supplier of LPG and LNG, and is the third largest supplier of crude oil. So taking these things into consideration, definitely it is a very long lasting pact that the government has signed. Even the renewable energy is also the next stop for bilateral energy ties, right? So this article is talking about the free trade agreement between India and UAE. Now guys, very important, UAE is also a gateway for the entire Middle East region, right? By because when we have a free trade agreement, right, the goods and services would be traded at a very nominal rates, right, at a concessional rates, correct? The import duties, export duties would be abolished or would be lessened, right? So thereby opening very huge market for Indian investors in UAE and UAE investors in India, correct? And when India would be investing in UAE, it would open the entire Middle East region for India, right? So in this way it is a very good initiative. Also you would be aware that recently 2 days back we had a class on current affairs where we discussed about Organization of Islamic Cooperation, of which India is not a member. It is a 57 member organization, right? And India, it talks about the interest of the Muslims across the world, right? And all the Islamic nations are its members. There are 57 member states. Although India is not a member, even though India has second largest Muslim population in the world, then also India is not being declared, not been made a member of OIC, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, right? Now UAE can definitely make our claim stronger to be a member of OIC, because earlier also it has helped India to break into the OIC in the spring of 2019. You would be remembering that Sushma Swaraj, the then foreign minister or external affairs minister, she addressed the meeting of the foreign ministers at OIC, right? And it was being helped by UAE, right? So therefore it may also open up the avenues for OIC, right? So guys, OIC के अंदर भी हमें एंट्री मिल सकती है if हम UAE से हमारे जो है relations are strong and better, right? At the same time, when Afghanistan is under turmoil, right, with the advent of Taliban, so greater cooperation with Gulf countries may help us in resolving the issues with respect to Afghanistan, correct? At the same time, we may also be better placed to handle the Houthi issue. You all would be knowing that there is a high level of threat from the Houthi fighters of Yemen. And guys, there was a news recently when 2 Indians also lost their lives. They were killed in the drone attacks claimed by Houthis, right? So in this way, Indian interests could also be protected in UAE. So guys, the second news article on the screen. Now, as we say, and that we don't limit ourselves to one newspaper, we use the important articles from some other prominent news papers also, right? So we do use Indian Express in our newspaper analysis classes. So this is an article from Indian Express. Now, government unveils green hydrogen policy to accelerate shift away from fossil fuels. Now guys, hydrogen is being said to as fuel of the future, right? Because it is and the green hydrogen especially, which is being prepared by splitting hydrogen from oxygen by the method of electrolysis, correct? So by a method of electrolysis, the hydrogen is separated from oxygen and through renewable energy, right? That means by the help of green energy or the renewable energy, the electrolysis is being conducted in splitting or separating hydrogen from oxygen, right? And this is called as green hydrogen. As you can see, it is produced using the renewable energy through electrolysis, and this method uses electrical current to separate hydrogen from oxygen in water. Now guys, government has unveiled its green hydrogen policy, green hydrogen and green ammonia policy, and guys, it is a net zero emitter. I mean, because the byproduct of green hydrogen, when the green hydrogen is being burnt, the byproduct is water, right, which is non-polluting, correct? So therefore the byproduct of the green hydrogen, which is water, is non-polluting, and that is the reason why it is net zero emitter. It is a clean fuel, right? And it is being produced by renewable energy through electrolysis, right? And electrolysis is a method of separating hydrogen from oxygen, and thus green hydrogen can be obtained, right? Now under the green hydrogen policy, government has targeted the production of 5 million tons by 2030. That means, and they may ask you in the examination that what is the target set by the government for green hydrogen. So guys, it is 5 million of green hydrogen by the year 2030. 5 million tons, right? So correct me if I'm wrong, it is 5 million tons. 5 million tons of green hydrogen by the year 2030. This is the target that the central government has set for themselves. Correct? So please take this, memorize it, right? And this is very, very important. Now this is in line with the NHM or National Hydrogen Mission. Let us understand how the process works, right? Now the central government is offering 25 years of free electricity to those new renewable energy power plants who are supplying the renewable energy to green hydrogen producers. For example, let's say there is a renewable energy plant here. Assume that it is located in Rajasthan, right? And it is supplying the green energy or the renewable energy. Let's say it is a solar power plant. It is supplying solar energy to a green hydrogen producer. Let's say in some other place, Gujarat, right? So a renewable energy plant or a solar power plant in Rajasthan supplying the renewable energy, solar energy to a green hydrogen producer, which would use the method of electrolysis, and this solar energy would be used in splitting hydrogen from the water, right? So in this way the hydrogen would be splitted, would be separated, and the green hydrogen would be created. So in this transaction they would be given 25 years of free power transmission. So this is a very big announcement by the government. Free power transmission to solar power plant, correct, in Rajasthan. So in this way it would be a win-win situation for the government. Government would also be able to meet its renewable energy target. You all would be knowing that COP26, which was held at Glasgow, Scotland, here Prime Minister Modi has set the renewable energy target of, you all know, 500 gigawatt to be achieved by 2030, correct? So in order to achieve this ambitious target of 500 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2030, green hydrogen would play a very, very important role, guys, because it is a future fuel, it is a net zero emitter, and COP26 has also said that we would achieve the net zero emission by 2070, right? So COP20, Conference of Parties 26, has said that the net zero emission would be achieved by the year 2070. So green hydrogen, which is a future fuel, would play a very, very important role in achieving this target, right? And as seen from the policy, 25 years of free power would be provided to the renewable energy plant who is supplying the renewable energy to the green hydrogen producer, right? So this is your green hydrogen, and as you can see that it is produced through electrolysis of water, an energy intensive process for splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen using renewable power to achieve this. I hope, guys, it is clear. I expect a question on this. So this means that the green hydrogen producer will be able to, for example, now the key users of the green hydrogen, right, are oil refining, and the key users of, in fact, hydrogen and ammonia are oil refining, fertilizer, steel sector, and they, to produce green hydrogen, so they would be able to produce green hydrogen for their own use, right? And today they use gray hydrogen, right? We'll learn about the gray hydrogen and the gray ammonia in the coming slides, right? So they would be the the key users of green hydrogen. So guys, this is how the green hydrogen will be manufactured. See here, the clean energy production. Let's say this is the wind energy, a renewable energy, turbines, right? And the clean energy is being produced. Hydro and wind are used to generate clean and renewable energy, and then this energy is fed into electrolyzer with water, right? And the electrolyzer, splits or separates hydrogen from oxygen, right? Splits water molecule to create the hydrogen and oxygen, right? Then this hydrogen gas is compressed and stored. So this hydrogen gas is compressed and stored, and once stored, this gas can be transported to any part in the world, right? So this is how the renewable energy, in this case wind energy, is being used into electrolyzer to split hydrogen and oxygen, right? And the byproduct is definitely water, which is non-polluting, and the hydrogen gas can be compressed and stored and can be transported to anywhere in the world. So this is how the clean energy would be used. Now the policy for green hydrogen and green ammonia provides green hydrogen and ammonia manufacturers may purchase renewable energy power from the power exchange, right? So these are the modalities of the scheme. The green hydrogen or ammonia manufacturer can bank their unconsumed renewable power up to 30 days, right? So that means जो उनका unconsumed renewable power होगा, they can park it or bank it with the power coms or distribution companies for 30 days and take it back when required. Similarly, there is also waiver of interstate transmission charges for a period of 25 years. So it is a very big move. That means, let's say a green energy producer, transporting the green energy from, let's say, Rajasthan to Assam, for the production of the green hydrogen, then the interstate transmission charges won't be applicable for 25 years. And right, if the project has been commissioned before June 30th 2025, right? And there would be a connectivity to the grid on priority basis, and also there would be single window clearances. The connectivity would also be speeden up, and it would also be the government would also allow to set up some bunkers for storage, right? Now this is about the green hydrogen. Guys, it is being said to be as the fuel of the future, and hydrogen, when burns, it produces energy, but the byproduct of burning hydrogen is water, making it the most environmental friendly fuel, right? And this green approach to producing hydrogen is good for sustainability, correct? So the government may also bring some production linked incentives or PLIs, and that would boost up the production of green hydrogen in India, right? So therefore it is definitely a sunrise industry, and government hopes that it would be able to fulfill its renewable energy target by using the green energy, green hydrogen, right? Now guys, some details and facts about hydrogen, because they may ask you in the examination. So hydrogen is the lightest and the first element on the periodic table, right? So science students would be knowing it, that it is the lightest element because the atomic number is 1, right? And it has 1 proton, correct? So therefore it is the lightest and the first element, and since the weight of hydrogen is less than air, right, it rises in the atmosphere and is therefore rarely found in its pure form, H2, right? At standard temperature and pressure, hydrogen is non-toxic, non-metallic and odorless, and highly combustible diatomic gas, right? Now hydrogen fuel, as I said, is a zero emission fuel, guys, which is burned with oxygen. It can be used in fuel cells or internal combustion engines. It is also used as a fuel for spacecraft propulsion, right? So this is these are the 3 types of hydrogen, which we were discussing, as we just discussed that in the steel sector, in oil refinery sector, gray hydrogen is being used, right? So gray hydrogen constitutes India's bulk production, extracted from hydrocarbons like fossil fuels, natural gas, and the byproduct of it is carbon dioxide, right? The second type is blue hydrogen. It is sourced from fossil fuels, and the byproduct is carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide, right? The byproducts are captured and stored, so it can be captured and stored. The byproducts like carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide can be, captured and stored, so better than gray hydrogen, right? So it is better than gray hydrogen. Now as far as green hydrogen is concerned, it is generated from renewable energy like solar, wind, etc., and the electricity generated through the renewable energy splits the water into hydrogen and oxygen, and the byproducts are water vapor, right, which is non-polluting, right? So it is a clean fuel, right? Now many South Asian nations like Japan, South Korea are at the forefront of using the hydrogen technology and the green hydrogen, and they do use the hydrogen fuel cells, right? They have hydrogen vehicles, charging stations, and fuel cells, right? So India also has a huge edge in green hydrogen production owing to its favorable geographical conditions, right? So as you can see, guys, the technology used in production and use of hydrogen like carbon capture and storage CCS and hydrogen fuel cell technology are at nascent stage, and these are the challenges which the national hydrogen policy may face, right? Because these technology like CCS and the hydrogen fuel cell technology are at the beginning stage or at the nascent stage. At the same time, they are very expensive, right? So it may turn this venture a costly affair. So therefore, but definitely if the government provides the incentives like PLIs and etc., then definitely it would be really very helpful for the government to achieve the renewable energy target. Now guys, let us start with the editorials. So on the Hindi newspaper editorial page, again we had the editorial on India UAE free trade agreement, right? The same thing that we discussed in the first slide. Now guys, it is definitely the first bilateral free FTA between India and UAE, and in this way India would enter into a global value chains, right? You all know, guys, as I said, that UAE is India's third largest trading partner, and in the last financial year, right, in the first 9 months we had a trade of around $52 billion, right? And we target that it will be above $100 billion in the merchandise trade after the the bilateral free trade agreement. And as far as the trade in services is concerned, it would go up to $15 billion, right, in next 5 years, right? So again I say, guys, in UAE is third largest trade partner of India, and as far as the bilateral trade is concerned, we had around $52 billion trade with UAE in merchandise, right? And with the FTA come into force in the next 5 years, we are gonna achieve or touch the target of $100 billion, right? $100 billion in the next 5 years. And as far as the merchandise trade is concerned, and $15 billion in the next 5 years in services trade, right? Number one. Number two, UAE is also the 9th largest investor in India, right? As you can see, it has invested in India. Its investment in India is estimated to be around $11.6 billion, which makes it 9th biggest investor, right? So majorly after FTA, definitely our investors would also find a big market for electronics, automobiles, and other engineering products. and India is aiming to achieve the $1 trillion of merchandise exports and $1 trillion of services exports by the year 2030, right? So this would be a very important move by the government. Plus UAE itself is a part of GAFTA. Guys, GAFTA is a greater Arab free trade agreement or free trade area, right? So GAFTA is Greater Arab Free Trade Area, right, of which UAE is one of the member countries. It also includes Saudi, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, Jordan, Egypt, Iraq, Lebanon, Morocco, Tunisia, Palestine, Syria, Libya and Yemen, right? So these are the countries which are the part of GAFTA, right? So therefore it is by entering into a free trade agreement with UAE, India can gain access or market access with GAFTA countries, right? Great Urban Free Trade Area, right? Greater Arab Free Trade Area, right? Now India may also start supplying handlooms, handicrafts, textiles and pharma, right? And so these are the things which are mentioned here. And definitely UAE has also in its Vision 2021 policy has opened up its diversified, in fact, its sector. Earlier its economy was heavily dependent on the export of the crude oil, right? But in Vision 2021 it has diversified its economy into some other areas, into some other non-hydrocarbon sectors, right? So in this way it would be a win-win situation for both UAE as well as India, right? I hope it is clear. So let us understand the article. So it is a new FTA, and in fact it is the first FTA between India and UAE, and India would no longer be signing trade agreements just to join a group, right? So Piyush Goyal, the Minister of Commerce and Industry, has clearly said that we won't be joining or entering into any free trade agreement with any country just to sign it, right? Just for the sake of signing it or just for the sake of joining the group, right? But the new approach of FTA negotiations would respond to the need of new emerging dynamics in international trade and the Indian economy, right? So that means it is now the FTAs would be signed only when the government sees that there is a need of new emerging dynamics in international trade, right, and the Indian economy, right? So it's there. Now we have entered into FTA with many countries like European Union, Australia, UK, Canada, Israel, and also the GCC, as you can see here, right? They intend to pursue the bilateral economic agreements, right? So UAE has has announced the bilateral agreements with other countries also, like India, UK, Turkey, South Korea, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Israel and Kenya, right? And it has diversified its sector to the non-crude oil dependent areas, right? So this is how we have set up the targets for the trade between India and the UAE, right? Now many Indian companies have also invested in tourism, hospitality, catering, health, retail and education sectors in UAE, and so the decided target is also being mentioned here, right? Now there are some UAE tariff structure is bound with the GCC and the applied average tariff rate is 5%. The scope of addressing the non-tariff barriers become very important, right? And when I say this, I mean the SPS sanitary, phytosanitary as per WTO guidelines, SPS and technical barriers to trade, right? As you can see here, the SPS notifications, and even in the here you can see, guys, that sanitary and phytosanitary SPS and technical barriers to trade, TBT, right? So the UAE has 451 SPS notifications. The SPS notifications are mainly related to live poultry, meat and processed food, right? So these are the notifications which relate to these commodities, whereas TBT notifications or technical barriers to trade notifications are being given with respect to fish, food additives, meat, rubber, electrical machinery, etc. And most of the notifications are related to consumer information, labeling, licensing or permit requirements, and import monitoring and surveillance requirements, right? And guys, these compliances pose a challenge for Indian exporters. The FTA agreement must try to bring more transparency and predictability in the use of NTBs so that their compliance becomes less cumbersome, right? So generally the WTO issues notifications to those to countries who do not fulfill or who do not comply their SPS or TBT guidelines, right? So sanitary and phytosanitary and technical barriers to trade actually applies to here, mainly related to live poultry, meat and processed food. And we hope that the FTA agreement would bring in more transparency and the process would become less cumbersome, right? So this was about this article, the important article on UAE India UAE free trade agreement, right? So the same thing was being discussed here, right? So guys, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the session. Be consistent in newspaper reading. We at ClatPrep would definitely help you. We are definitely uploading the video lectures on daily basis. Stay tuned. Press the bell icon for the new notifications. Good day. Goodbye. All the best.